Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's talk about what happens when you try to steamroll the wrong educator. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Principal demanded unpaid work, mocked my education, and got a staff exodus instead. I've been teaching for 6 years, at my last school for 2 years. I have a BA in history and MA in education. My principal and administrative staff pulled me out of one of my classes during an intense lecture I was giving and ambushed me in the hallway to ask/tell me I was going to teach IB classes next year. For those unaware, International Baccalaureate courses are intense classes for high school students that last from 1 to 2 years. These classes are intense, requiring what some teachers have said to be the time equivalent of a part-time job for them to plan and prepare without additional pay and not part of my contract. For context, within the first 2 weeks of working at this school, I noticed the other side of the pendulum. These students with learning challenges were being pushed aside in order to achieve the principal's goals of becoming an elite IB school. I began advocating for these students and offered to teach co-taught class with a special education teacher in order to help these students achieve. It was a great success, seeing many of the former troubled students actively being engaged in class, and through the grapevine, I was told I was one of their favorite teachers since I got them. After the first semester, I heavily petitioned the staff to allow me to teach more of these specialized classes across my department. Here's the deal. There was no change in the curriculum, just in how I presented it to the shared class. Anyhow, the principal shot down my idea but allowed me to continue with my lone class for the next year. Back to the present. After the ambush, I went home and talked it over with my wife. She's my rock, and understood that I was troubled with the additional task of basically adding an additional 15 hours of work a week to my schedule. She said, "Go with your heart." The next week, I scheduled a meeting with the principal. I told him I was unprepared to teach the IB course this year, but if he'd give me this year to prepare the additional materials and create a curriculum, I would be good to go for the next. I also asked if there were any other additional classes he would like for me to put together to teach next year. He said no, teach this course next year or look for another job. I asked about additional co-taught courses for the shared students who were overlooked. He said they were not important. I reminded him yet again I was currently working toward my PhD in history in order to teach college-level courses in high school so students could get dual credit and a jump on college and tech schools. He laughed at me and said, I quote, "None of the additional education you've taken since you started working here benefits the school at all. No one cares." This took the wind out of me. I love teaching. All of the additional work, time, and effort spent away from my family has been in order to be a better teacher or a better example for my students. I told him I wouldn't need to think about this and quietly left the room. I took the next day off, spending time with my family and speaking with my therapist. I'm very lucky to have a wonderful support system. I went back to work after that, and there were a number of staff that spoke to me privately. They agreed what he said was shameful. They shared that I was not the only teacher he spoke to this way, from changing failing grades to passing, to having teachers sponsor multiple extracurricular clubs without pay. I went to my union rep and added my statement to his ever-growing pile of staff statements about the principal. I assured him I was willing to go to the school board, etc. Just give me a call. Yep, I decided I was done. I wrote the principal an outstanding resignation letter full of positivity and thanking him for the wonderful opportunity to work at his school and to have learned from his outstanding example of leadership. Did I also mention I forwarded the email to the entire staff? There was no way he could publicly respond negatively to my resignation, and he was furious. The majority of the staff knew what was going on. There were many smiles and fist bumps. I was told by the office staff later there were 5 other teachers that resigned, making this the biggest turnover in staff in a decade. The principal now has to go before the school board next month to explain what's happening at his school. I wonder if I'm going to get a call. What an absolute jerk of a person. This man should never, ever have been put in charge. His entire attitude of, I only want the best students to succeed, should have him run out of town. And our second story. Karen tries to get me fired from a job that isn't mine. So I work for an events company that's contracted by a premium hotel franchise. Because I don't work for the hotel and my clients are only there for events, I don't have any responsibility to answer regular guest questions. Usually I do because they're pretty easy questions, i.e., where's the bathroom? And I'm not a total douche. Today I spent a lot of time running around ground fall, moving equipment around. I probably spent about 2 hours trying to locate small bolts one of my casual staff had lost and was in a pretty crappy mood. As I was moving one of the last items of equipment, I hear a lady scream, "Oi, you there!" Obviously, wasn't one of my clients, so I ignored it and kept walking. Get about 5 steps forward and I hear it again. I turned to find Karen in the small lounge area and assumed this wasn't going to be pretty. Boy, was I correct. Karen, are you deaf? Me, no, sorry, just rushing. Can I help you with anything? Karen, well, I've been waiting for my room to be ready for 4 hours. When is it going to be ready? Me, oh, sorry, I don't actually work for the hotel. I'm sure if you go down to the lobby, they can look that up for you. Karen, what do you mean you don't work here? I've been watching you move hotel things for the past hour, you piece of crap. Me, whoa, okay. Well, I'm actually contracted by the Karen cuts me off. I don't want to hear your bullcrap. Now go find out when my room will be ready. Me, again, I don't work here, so I can't help. But the lobby's right over there, and I'm sure someone will be happy to assist. Karen, I don't want to go to the lobby. If I did, why the F do you think I called you over? Me, well, you called over the wrong person. I've told you I don't work here. I can't help. Karen, do you know how much money I spend here? I want you to bring your manager down here now. Me, well, unless you want to chat to my manager about hosting an event here, he can't help either. Karen, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have you fired. Me, cool, give it your best shot. I then walked away as she was still yelling at me. She ended up filing a formal complaint about the interaction. Myself and the hotel manager had a laugh about it, and I wasn't fired. Edit. No, I was not worried about getting fired. There's no legal way I could have in that situation. No, I don't work for the AV company. You were nice not to cut her off when she cursed at you. That was always the line for me. I would have told her that I'm no longer obligated to help her with anything because she cannot behave in a civilized manner. And our last story. Some kid used my grandparents' yard as a parking spot. My grandparents lived in a quiet college town in a sweet old craftsman-style house that just sat a couple blocks away from the university. It was the kind of neighborhood that changed with the seasons, peaceful in the summer, alive with the hum of campus life during the school year, and utterly chaotic during Greek week. Their street was lined with ivy-covered frat houses, sorority mansions with Greek letters proudly displayed, and the occasional student rental bursting at the seams with too many roommates. Over the years, my grandparents got used to the noise, the music, even the occasional beer can tossed over the fence. But what they never got used to was the parking situation. See, their property included a long driveway and a well-maintained lawn, both of which apparently were irresistible to lazy or drunk students looking for a quick parking solution. It was like their yard had a neon sign that said free parking, and the college crowd took it seriously. Cars blocking the driveway, almost weekly. Motorcycles on the walkway, at least twice. But one Friday night during the rush season, things escalated in a new and profoundly stupid way. That afternoon, I was visiting for the weekend, me and my 2 cousins, all college-aged ourselves, and more than a little familiar with how wild the weekends could get. We were sitting in the living room drinking iced tea with Grandpa when my grandmother came in furious. "There's a car on the lawn," she snapped. We all stood up immediately. Sure enough, right there under the maple tree in the middle of their front yard was a shiny white Honda Civic, 2 wheels completely on the grass, like someone had made a half-hearted attempt at off-roading, then decided it was close enough and walked off to party. Grandpa muttered, "Unbelievable," and reached for the phone to call the tow company, but after 5 minutes on hold, he hung up with a sigh. "They're backed up towing cars from the street," he said. "Won't get here till tomorrow morning." The 3 of us grandsons looked at each other, and without a word, we walked outside. We circled the car for a minute. It wasn't locked, but we didn't touch the inside. We had a better plan. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" my cousin Jack grinned. Street parking's illegal after midnight, I replied. Let's help this guy out. It took all three of us, some grunting and a few sliding maneuvers using old moving blankets from the garage, but we managed to roll the Civic off the grass and down the driveway. The street was narrow and lined on both sides with parked cars, but we wedged it neatly across the street, perpendicular to traffic, completely blocking both lanes. We didn't say a word to Grandma or Grandpa, just went back inside, resumed our tea, and waited. About 45 minutes later, blue and red lights reflected off the living room walls. We peeked through the curtains to see two campus police officers standing near the car, one on the radio, the other shaking his head. A tow truck showed up within 15 minutes. Guess they're not too busy anymore, I said. The car was hooked, lifted, and gone in 10. The street cleared, the grass unharmed, and honestly, the satisfaction was priceless. It was around 2 a.m. when the knock came. Grandpa was still up, reading in the den, and answered the door. "Hi," slurred a vaguely familiar voice. A college kid, probably no older than 21, swaying slightly on the front step. This is going to sound weird, but do you know what happened to a white Honda Civic that was parked here? Grandpa didn't miss a beat. Was it on the street? The kid hesitated. No, like on the lawn. Grandpa gave him the longest, most grandfatherly stare you've ever seen. No words, just disappointment and a silent calculation of how many brain cells had died in this child's lifetime. Then he said, "Yeah, the police towed it. Blocking the street's a no-no, son." The kid looked baffled, swayed again, and mumbled something about calling his roommate. Grandpa just shut the door gently and locked it. The next morning, Grandma made waffles. We all sat out back while somewhere some hungover idiot tried to explain to his dad why he needed $300 to get his car out of impound. Knocking on your grandparents' door to ask about their car should be a huge indicator that they were illegally parked on private property and shouldn't have been there to begin with. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.